Welcome to Mary's Eclectic Interests. Today I'll be presenting how to make marinated raw vegetables and fresh apple salsa. I'll be starting with the marinated raw vegetables, and all you need for that is celery, broccoli, cauliflower, carrots, red onion, and grape tomatoes. And of course, you're going to need an Italian dressing, which I'll get to later. When I buy vegetables and bring them home from the store, even if they say they've been washed, I don't care. I will take out a pan and put a little bit of white vinegar in it and a little bit of dish soap and wash them all out and thoroughly rinse them prior to use. Normally I make this dish for larger functions. I usually use this 8-quart container. And as of late, I haven't been going to any family functions, but I have been volunteering over here at CCX. And so whenever I had a show here on premise, I would try to do 2 shows in a day. So I'd be here all afternoon, and I would bring this dish to feed my crew, my guests, and all of the paid staff that help us out over at CCX. And everybody seemed to like it. And so I was making it probably once a month. And it was well received, and I didn't have to worry about it. I could just let it set out on the table. I'd go and put the lid on, so they would take the lid on and off. Now, as you see, I am cutting up the cauliflower, and you'll notice I'm cutting it quite small. The one thing I dislike are these really large, such as this broccoli one that I'm showing you here. It's so large that if you're at a family reunion or anything, they're hard to eat. Make them small like the cauliflower. And then this way, too, it's easier for children to eat, and you're not sitting there trying to cut it with a plastic fork or something or a plastic knife. It doesn't work out real well. So I do cut them up extremely small, and I don't cut the grape tomatoes in half or anything. I leave them whole. And I also, especially if it's for a family function, I'll cut the red onion in large circles. I'll try to do them thin, but in a whole circle, so that those who don't like onions can easily pick them out. When I made an 8-quart container, I was buying the largest cauliflower I could get, and I knew certain people like carrots, so I'd buy more of those. I didn't do so much with the tomatoes, and the tomatoes you can leave in or out. As a matter of fact, for many years, I never used tomatoes. The original recipe used green pepper. I would advise you not to put green pepper in. This dish stays for several days, and that green pepper it takes it over. The whole thing starts tasting like green pepper. So I eliminated that years ago from the original recipe, and I added in the little grape tomatoes, but only if I was going to serve it within the next day or so. And even then, I didn't cut those tomatoes. So you'll see how I'm going to be putting this together. Right now, I'm going to be making a dish just for myself. You'll see I'm using that little green container. And even this is quite a bit of salad for me, and I will be eating it over the next week. Fortunately, we were having some warm weather, so salad tastes quite good. And don't worry about those little carrots. I realized I had left them on the counter, and they look like they're not any good. They just started drying out a little bit, and that's what happens when the water evaporates that are on the carrots. And the other advantage to this salad is that when I took this to family reunions, there's really nothing in there that I had to worry about. I didn't have to keep it cold. I didn't have to do anything. I just set it out. I did make sure that I do have family members that have food sensitivities and food allergies. I always make sure that when I bring something, I bring the recipe with me and let them know exactly what spices are in there, what kind of oil I'm using, and I set it right there. And that way they can look at it and know if it's safe or not for them. Some people can't have certain spices, and I do know some people can't have certain oils. So I'll put on there that I used a canola oil, or I used an olive oil, or whatever I did use, and list and have the packet that had the spice packet sitting there. And then that way they can read it and feel safe that they can eat it. Another thing that this is really wonderful for, you can make it, yes, a day ahead of time. It's really, really nice. It's better if it marinates for a day. So I'd go to these family functions, and instead of having to do all of this the day of, I would do it the day before. And I got quite good at and quite fast at cutting all of these down. I could do that huge 8-quart thing probably in an hour, and that's making the dressing and everything. And then you just put it in your refrigerator, and the next day you take it, put maybe some ice packs around it, and you're off and running. If you're taking it to another home, you can just, I don't even worry about it. It doesn't have to go in the fridge. I just let it sit on the counter. It's usually so big you can't get it into a refrigerator anyway. The size that I like is on the left-hand side. That's what I consider a grape tomato. They called these grape tomatoes, but they were much larger than the normal, what I usually see in the stores, which are very, very small, the size of a grape. And those I would just throw in, and they were perfect mouth size. And these are going to be a little harder. If somebody gets this on their plate, they're going to have to cut them. I realized when I was doing this that all of a sudden I went from cutting carrots to where's the celery? So I accidentally cut out more of the film than I should have. So I'm making this go a little bit faster because I need enough time for the second show on this half-hour show. And you'll see that I do the celery small. I do, as I mentioned, everything very, very small. And of course, what I'm doing here now is a complete voiceover because my audio wasn't any good on the original production. The next thing I'll be doing is cutting that red onion. Now, I'm not a professional, and I just do it my own way. I have a tendency to cut that end, you'll see, and then, of course, I'm going to take all the peelings off around. And you'll also notice that I'm speeding this up because this is going to take quite a while, and I do have 2 dishes I want to get into this half-hour show. So let's get going. And as you see, it's not necessarily coming off the way I want, but that happens. And who's going to notice it anyway? Once it's in that bowl, it's going to be sliced in round rings. Now, this one, I am going to slice it up a little bit smaller because it's for me. But this is what I usually like. I like just doing the rings. And then on top of it, when I make that big 8-quart one, I don't mix it in with all the other vegetables. I let it sit on top. That way, if you have any children that come up, they don't like red onion, they can just move it to the side. Or if they do get any, because they are those large rings, they could just easily pull them out. There's nothing worse than, here, this is how I'm going to cut it for myself. I'm going to cut it much smaller. But I normally would not do that if I'm bringing this dish to some function. I do it that way because I have people that say, I don't care for mushrooms. And I was making lasagna, and I said to my neighbors, well, I'll bring you some over. But I says, I don't think I'm going to put the mushrooms in. And they go, oh, you can pick them out. Have you ever tried picking out small pieces of mushroom in lasagna? No. So I did get even with them. I did put mushrooms in, but I chopped them up so fine that I won't even notice them. But this is what I do, as you notice, and there's the difference. See how small those are? Those are so hard to pick out of a salad, and that's why I like to leave them in that great big ring format. So I did a little cleanup there, and all that's left are the onions and the tomatoes, and I'm not going to put those in yet. This is the dressing that I'm going to be using. It's called Good Season Zesty Italian. It must be the zesty. If you don't get the zesty, there's no zest. All we have to do is follow the package instructions. And as you can see, I've put a few things out. We'll need apple cider vinegar. I'm using canola oil just because I know it's a lightweight oil. You want a light tasting oil. Nothing heavy, or it's going to take, as I mentioned earlier, it's going to take over your vegetables. And water. And FYI, that big 8-quart container, that takes about 4 packets of that type of dressing. And normally when I make this dressing, I will make it in a blender. And that's because I want to make it into almost a creamy Italian so it won't separate on me. What I'm doing now is because I'm making only one packet of dressing, I'm going to use my little Ninja and just make a small batch. So here we go with the dressing. Okay, all I'm putting in is the 1/4 cup of apple cider vinegar. And then I'll put in the 3 tablespoons of water, topped off with 1/2 cup of canola oil. And then on top of that, I'm going to put, of course, the season packet. I'll empty that in there. Okay, the next thing I'm going to do is put, as you notice, everything's in the Ninja. Now make sure you put that cover on very securely. I have made that mistake before where I didn't tighten it quite enough. Now my Ninja is over on the other side of the kitchen and I'm not going to move it. So I'm just going to go over and bring it there and process it and then come back. And I'm going to pulse it. See how creamy it is. Like I said, it's like a creamy Italian. And, oh, barely see it. And I'm going to be pouring it into the bowl that I have here. And I'm leaving plenty of room to shake. And this is the other reason sometimes I don't put everything in and some of the things go on top because it can get quite cramped in some of my bowls when I fill them up with all those vegetables. And I'm looking for the lid, and here it is. And now I'm going to just shake that. And once I shake it, I'm going to take the remainder of the vegetables that I have there and put them in. But here, this is what it looks like. Okay, the next thing I'm going to do, it looks like I might be going for the tomatoes. And like I said, I usually like them much smaller than that, and I just throw those in. And because this is for me, I am actually going to mix this all up. Normally, I would leave the tomatoes and the onions on top and mix them later, but I'm going to do it all together right now. And of course, I have the big rings, and that's how I normally do the larger size dishes so that people can pull them out if they don't like it. And that's what I do. I just put it on the top as a decoration. So now, as you notice, I'm just throwing in the last of the onions. And this is going to be a little hard to shake because of not only the form, the bowl. I like a flatter bowl. It's easier to mix, but this one is the old Tupperware lettuce container, and I find more different reasons or different ways of using that besides putting lettuce in it, and this is one of them. You can burp it, and it'll stay a little longer. So here we go, and I'm going to show it to you in a second here. And here we go. We're finished. My next recipe will be for fresh apple salsa. And this is another recipe that you can make as large or as small as you want to. And as you'll notice on your screen, you have a red pepper and apple. This one is a Honeycrisp apple, but you can use any nice solid sweet apple. And of course, green tail onions, parsley, salt, and sugar. And last but not least, we'll be using some olive oil and some white vinegar. When I first saw the combination, I thought, you've got to be kidding me. This can't taste good. I just love it. We will start with the apple. I am not going to peel it. Because they want you, now there's a little spoiling, a little bruise on here, so I'll just cut that out later. And some people take out the middle if you have one of those apple cores. I don't have one, so. And this is not something I suggest little kids do at all. You can really cut yourself good.
And I don't even know if my bowl's going to be big enough. I'm hoping it will be. If not, I'm going to have to find something else. Okay, shall we see if we can get a cup out of this? I think it's going to be more than a cup. But usually what I do is I just use 1 apple, 1 red pepper, and put in whatever onion I decide I want. So what you're going to do is you're going to make little squares. I'm getting rid of the seed. Half of this is going to make 1 there. Look at that. Just half the apple is coming up with 1 cup. And I'm going to take that little bruise off of there. And I'm going to take this little portion off because I don't like that. So here's our 1 cup. So I'm just going to do this whole apple because I know I'm not going to eat it anyway. I won't eat half of it. And I'm going to have to find myself a bigger container. One of the other meals I want to make, I had purchased asparagus. I would have done that tonight, but I was sidetracked today, helping a neighbor and doing some other things. It was nice out too. And I have to make 4 hard-boiled eggs, and I like to do that the day before. So that meal isn't going to be done. I might do the eggs tonight and get that done maybe Wednesday during the day. Let's get rid of all these. Okay. So this is one of these, actually both of these are great dishes for, as I said, holidays. And if that fly does not get out of here, if you're wondering why I'm batting it, I went in and out of my house too much today, and that darn little fly came in through the garage, probably when I was bringing in all the food. There we go, that's done. So that's 2 cups of apples. So we're actually doubling this. Oops, we're going to go this way. Okay, oops, look at, got this little sticker on there still. So I have a plastic bag over by the sink, and I throw all my food scraps in there. And luckily, I have a small freezer, which you probably can see over here on the right-hand side a little bit. It's not a big freezer, but it's a small freezer. And I keep my smelly trash in there, all the food pieces. And then that way, I have, unfortunately, we have to keep our trash cans in the garage, and it can get quite smelly. It's not so bad in the winter. In the wintertime, it's great because you can bring stuff out and just throw it in and it doesn't matter. But in the summer, that's kind of what I do. And there's that darn fly again. I don't want them to go on my food. It really irks me. Gives me something to whine about, though. Get that darn thing out of here. I did shut the bedroom door, though. There's nothing worse than getting a fly in your bedroom door or in the bedroom, and you're asleep, and then in the middle of the night you go, that darn, especially, I think they say the female makes all that noise. And there you are, and it's around your head, and so for the next hour, you're up trying to catch the little bugger. So you can, I hate to say it, whack at one. They have all the outside. They're not supposed to be in my house. So this means, because I had 2 cups of apples with that one apple, that I can use all of this pepper. So I might double up on the other. On the vinegar and all that other stuff. Oh, this is going to be a double batch. So this is another what kind of marinates, and there we go. I'm not a very fastidious chopper. It's like, get it done and eat it. Okay, now let's see about the onion. Starting to look kind of pretty in there. And I want to get that vinegar on so my apples aren't going to start browning, because that's what they do. Oops, that went flying. It's one thing nice, it's summertime, so a lot of the food that we're eating is a little fresher than in the winter. Of course, in today's world, you can get fresh food from around the world. One onion down. So instead of as you see, I don't like the green portions up there. I'll use that for something else. I like the actual onion part on the, and then up to a certain point on the stalk. The other part, I can always use it in cooking or something. There, that's all I want on that. Oops. I don't want those little heads in there. Since we have a double batch, I'm just going to get rid of all these onions. Otherwise, as I said, they'll sit in my refrigerator. I'll forget about them, and then they won't be any good. And I do that all the time, and I'm pretty frugal with my food, and as far as waste. I might have 1 bag of trash, and that's all the trash in the house. What I normally fill up is the recycle bin, but even then I don't do a whole lot of that either, because I don't do too many of the canned goods. There's certain things that I have a lot of the beans and different things that I can put together with something else and make, let's say, chili or something. But I did have time to go through all my cupboards earlier. It's one on my list of things to do, and I discovered I had all these canned goods that were outdated. And I'm going, well, I won't feed them to anybody else. They're not dented or anything. And I'm not advising this to anybody, but I put them down below in a certain one of the shelves. And those that are from the 19th, which is around December, I figure that's not too old. Okay, we've got all of this. I'm going to take some of these longer pieces out. I don't like those. They got a little too long there. And let's get rid of this. Keep an eye on this, will you? Make sure that fly doesn't land there. That's just going to irk me to no end. So instead of 2 teaspoons of olive oil, we're going to use 4 teaspoons. All right. One, 2, 3, 4. All right, that's 4. And then we're going to do 2 teaspoons of, instead of 2 teaspoons of vinegar, we're going to do 4. And I might end up pouring the whole thing in. So let's be a little bit smarter and just get another bowl and do this separate. And as you can see, I buy the white vinegar by the gallons or 2 gallons. I do use a lot of it for cleaning, washing my vegetables. I use the white vinegar and a little bit of, I have some mild dish soap that I use. I hope that's 4 because I wasn't really counting. And there. And white vinegar is great for cleaning. Okay, it says 1 teaspoon of salt, and I don't know, I never did like how much salt they put in there. I'm going to cheat on that. I am going to put the sugar in. And as I said, 2 teaspoons, so we're going to use 4 teaspoons of sugar. I have 2 here. Okay, this makes 4. And I know you just put it in there, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to try something different, see how this works. I might cringe and go, why did I do that? But here, there, that's close enough. And you can always adjust this if you don't want this to adjust the salt downward. Okay, that goes in. Oh, and a little bit of pepper. Okay. Well, let's just take the pepper top off and throw a little pinch of pepper in there. This is fresh parsley. And that sugar is not staying on the, yep, the sugar just all plopped on the top. That's okay, it'll work its way through. You just keep shaking it. This is going. So now I'm going to have to find the top to that bowl and give it a good shake. Here we go. And as I said, it stays in the refrigerator quite nice. I now have food for a week.